And you've just heard The Innocent Win, taken from Pumajaw's latest album, Scappa Full Scap. And I'm delighted to be joined now by Pumajaw themselves, Pinky McClure and John Wills. Hello, both.
Hello.
Hello.
So first of all, what can you tell us about Scappa Full Scap?
Well, it took a long time to get going. And it came out of, I was doing some recording in Orkney, and hence the name.
Yeah.
Just did some field recording with a guy called Chris Watson, who's a kind of famous sound recordist for the BBC. He was doing a course there, and I hadn't been really doing a lot of music. I've just been getting more into field recording. Right. So I was doing this thing, and I brought them back, and they kind of inspired me to start doing more stuff with sound, which eventually led to doing more stuff with music again, and inspired by my experience, just like the big spaces and the big skies of Orkney. And I was just kind of messing around. I wasn't really thinking about putting stuff out or anything like that. I was just kind of enjoying myself. And then one day, Pinky found these bits and pieces that I've been doing, and she can take the story from there.
Well, I had actually knocked it on the head with music, I was getting a bit jaded and cynical after many years of feeling like the music business is a bit of a nightmare and what's the point and all those kind of things that most musicians go through at some point. And we had done a fringe show in 2015 just because we wanted to do something different. And that had been really good fun, but it was really tiring. Right. Because, well, anybody who's ever done that, you have to set up your own PA and do everything yourself, and then do, sort of 22 shows on the trot, and then rush out of the venue and drive home. It was all getting a bit much, and we did that in Germany as well. So I thought, right, I'm not going to do music for a while, and hadn't been. But then I heard these bits and bobs that John had recorded, and I got a bit jealous. I thought, I want a bit of this. I like this too much. It's got a really nice magical feel about it, and I'd love to sing on some of it. And so that was, well, quite a long time ago now. That was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, and it kind of started things up again slowly. And but then it wasn't really until lockdown happened that we suddenly found ourselves with lots of time, and decided to actually make it a proper album and finish it. So it's actually the first album that we've done or put out for 6 years.
Yeah, so we did do a soundtrack for a film, which came out a little bit before that. But yeah, that's the proper kind of real Pumajaw album.
So this sounds like quite an interesting process. Was the music already there before the lyrics were added, or did it become didn't become a kind of collaboration, that you were working together?
It started off with quite loose soundscapes, I guess you'd call them, that John had made, and there's about probably 4 tracks on it that were written like that. There's also a couple that were instigated by me that are more just kind of me sitting down at a keyboard and opening my mouth and seeing what comes out. So our whole approach to it was just to make it really loose without any preconceptions, and just to sort of not put any pressure on ourselves and just do it really kind of slow and organic, I think, with the approach.
And your original recordings, John, were you going to do something with them, or was it purely the kind of process of making the music?
I did some things. I was recording in a technique which gives a 3-dimensional sound, so it's called ambisonics. So I used, well, at the end of the time with Chris Watson, we actually did a piece about the sea with a multi-array speaker setup in St Magnus Cathedral for their festival, and then I did another little thing in Burnham Arts Centre with an ambisonic setup. And it's still something I'm interested in, but it's kind of I haven't really done that much. I did do some for a podcast which I ran, asking for people's environments, called the Great John Cage Project. So yeah, I'm still keeping interested in recordings, but those original recordings I've still got, but I haven't actually released them as just raw recordings. I've kind of just used them for textures and things.
Because it seems that kind of field recordings, I mean, for people who don't know, how would you explain it to them?
It's just, well, a field recording is just going anywhere with a microphone, with a portable microphone. So, could go down the shops, you can go to the middle of nowhere. It's just a recording of your environment. Yeah. Simple as that.
I know it's something my brother's really interested in, and he was telling me how now, I think even as part of Google Maps, you can go somewhere and there are recordings that you can get from various different places.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few sites which do audio mapping of the world. Yeah, there's also a microphone company called Rode who've just released hundreds of ambisonic recordings which you can listen to just with ordinary headphones. So yeah, it's quite popular.
So for those who don't know you and your music, can you give a kind of potted history of Pumajaw, because you've been making music for a while, if you don't mind me saying?
It's quite a big pot. Well, we met in the late 90s. I was living in London, and I had an album coming out on Beggars Banquet Records, as it was then, and John co-produced it, and we discovered that we had a lot in common, specifically actually this interest in using field recordings in the music, or to make music, which is something that I had also been doing since the 80s. So we kind of hit it off and just kept recording together. Put our first album out together in 2000. On a Sheffield label called Liquid, and then we put out, that's when we moved back to Scotland in 2001, and we were living in Cellardyke in Fife then, and hooked up with the Fence Collective and did some stuff with them, and then we had a deal with Fire Records and put out some albums with Fire Records, and then nearly everything that we've done since then has just been our own label, and we've been very kind of self-sufficient and just done very well sort of self DIY tours really. And
yeah, I mean, the music was designed to go in a suitcase, so it's quite we did go through a sort of an acoustic key phase, but we've always used electronics and loops and stuff like that, and it's always been kind of cinematic, I guess, sort of sounding.
I've always had quite a broad taste in music. I really like excuse me, folk music and jazz and all sorts of electronic music. So I wanted to try and sort of pull together elements of all of those things rather than falling into one particular genre. I always like to see if you can push genres a bit. When we were doing the acoustic stuff, we did versions of traditional Scottish songs, but in a sort of quite post-rock electronica kind of way, which I think blew a few people's minds at the time. But so I don't like to be categorized particularly. I like doing hybrid of different hybrids of stuff.
And I think you can hear that in all your music, but particularly in this album, there seems to be a lot of the influences coming in. And it's interesting that you mentioned being cinematic, because that was my next question. It's always had a kind of cinematic quality to it. We're going to play Mummerized in a minute, which sounds to me like something from a kind of 70s horror movie, a British 70s. I can imagine it playing over the credits at the end, So what were your kind of non-musical influences?
Non-musical?
Yeah, like film or
yeah, film, definitely, yeah.
Well, certainly film noir has been a big thing. We're both big fans of The Night of the Hunter.
Yeah,
and
I was thinking about it, yeah.
In fact, we recorded one of the songs from that film on the album previous to this one, the lullaby from that.
I'm a massive Stanley Kubrick fan as well. And the two soundtracks that I really love are 2001 and The Shining.
Yeah.
So maybe that's where the horror thing comes from. I don't know. I've always been a fan of the minor key. So yeah.
I don't think I don't think my music as being that scary, although some people think it's scary. But I guess it does have a sort of melancholic.
I think that's it. It's not scary as such, but just, you know, the kind of tone. I'm thinking even of the Wicker Man, that kind of thing. There's something slightly off about the film, and it's often about the music as well. You know, it's just maybe it is minor keys and melancholy and all of those things kind of come through.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's just, I don't know why, it's just always there with me anyway.
And it's interesting you mentioning Scottish folk music, because I think it's in there as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's something that, I mean, I grew up in Banffshire, and my mum was very keen on the Celtic harp, and she listened to a lot of Gaelic music as well. So I very much was immersed in those pentatonic scales and those the drones and this kind of slight eeriness that there is in a lot of that music, and I've always really loved that. Yeah. And I always got a bit annoyed that people sort of think that, you know, Scottish country dance music is that's Scottish folk music, and they don't know about this sort of rich, much earlier, older history of really quite, I think, really fascinating songs. Especially from the northeast of Scotland, there's that whole heritage there of bothy ballads and stuff that are quite weird.
I think in maybe the last 10, 20 years, it's beginning to be rediscovered and promoted. But you're right, my idea of Scottish folk was, you know, Burns Night on the telly or Hogmanay or something like that. You didn't really get these wonderful, eerie is a great term actually for it. That's exactly what it's like. Now, you mentioned that you did your show in Edinburgh a few years ago. Are you going to tour Scapa Full Scap? Is there a plan to take it out?
We might do.
It's finding the right venue, because we do music that's not, you know, maybe festival music or you know, really kind of up-tempo rock music. You've got to really be quite careful where you play, and that's partly why we did the Fringe show, because we just thought, oh, that's something completely different. And you know, you want to have an audience that's willing to sit down and shut up and listen, really, rather than, you know, somebody who's going to be blethering all the way through it. But
no, I think that's exactly it. I think if we could find the right venues and, you know, people wanted to come, then definitely. But just to go out and hope for the best, I don't really fancy doing that anymore. We've done that a lot.
We're going to be selective.
Yeah.
Perfect. And would it have a kind of visual element to it? Would you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But I think that's really like 40% of the thing, at least. So we'd definitely be some kind of film or something. Good lights. Yeah.
Sounds good. I think you should do it.
Well, okay.
I'm going to start building that Wicker Man now.
No, that's a thing. What an indoor set that would be.
Just need a high ceiling, that's all.
So you mentioned that this is your first album for a while. Has it kind of reignited the fire to do more, or you think it might be a while before you do the next one? Has for me, definitely.
Yes, well, we made the decision that we thought, well, you know, as we haven't done anything for a while, and it might take the world a while to realise that we're back. We thought, well, we'll just put this album out and then put another one out, or put an EP out or something, you know, within the next year. I think we're you know, because also there are lots of bits and bobs of material floating around now that we can work on, and John's always coming up with weird and wonderful things. So yes, I think we will definitely be doing more.
Well, I look forward to hearing that. But in the meantime, I'm really enjoying Scapa Full Scap. I think it's a great album.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to both of you for taking the time to have a chat. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having us. And,
yes, thank you.
Keep up the cause. It's great
Definitely.
What you're doing.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And this is Pumajaw and Murmurized.